Ever wondered how to write a perfect cover letter for product manager role? Or how is it like to work in a startup as a product manager? Or how to transition from a consultant role to a product manager role? If yes, then make sure you watch this video till the end. Hello everyone, welcome back to my product chat series. My name is Rafeda. I post content about product management, international students, job related tips, and so much more. Today I will be interviewing Sarosh Mawani, who is a product manager in a startup in New York. He currently works for Invisibly. He made a transition from a consultant role to a product manager role. He definitely has amazing career trajectory, and there's so much I learned from him during the interview. I cannot even tell you. So make sure you continue watching. Hi, Sarosh. Thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited about our chat today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's been a fun morning and excited for the conversation. It's lovely to be here.
Perfect. Thank you. So how about we start with your journey? You have an amazing background. You have like different experiences, different industries on there. Would love to know more about your journey from you.
Yeah, of course. My product journey specifically started at a product consultancy called Conrad here in New York City. Um, that was where, other clients would come to us to help them either redo their websites or build simple mobile applications. And I think that's where I really got to build kind of my feature building chops, if you want to call them, working with business teams, working with designers, working with engineers. And so that's where I kind of established my product foundation. From there, I went on to do in-house product management at Tend, which is a dental startup. When I joined, they were pre-Series B, and I kind of left them post-Series C. So through an exciting growth journey. And my focus there was working on our consumer-facing mobile app and patient experience. So, how people signed up for appointments or making the treatment experience for dental procedures more accessible and educational and easy. So that was a lot of fun because it was taking this traditionally very invasive journey of like working with braces or orthodontic treatments and bringing this like techie product focused lens to those worlds was really exciting. Um, and then product wise, most recently, I've been at Invisibly, which is the platform for people to earn value through their data. So I'm sure we'll dive into that. So that's kind of my product focused background for sure.
Okay, makes sense. So you mentioned very briefly, but how did you move from like a political science background, which you did in bachelor's degree, to a business side and being a product manager then?
Yeah. So I went to school and undergrad at Texas A&M where I studied political science with a concentration in international development and then also business. So I was kind of debating between the two on whether I want to go into the nonprofit world or if I want to go into consulting. And towards the latter part of that journey, I did want to go into consulting, and I was excited about consulting because while I was interning for a developmental nonprofit in South Africa, the
Mhm.
founder actually was a former Deloitte consultant. So he told me about consulting, and he told me about all the benefits to it, um, and said, "Hey, this is a field you should really check out if you're unsure of how you want to grow and what you want to do." And so, kind of my senior year of college, I was interviewing with all these consulting firms. And honestly, I thought I had failed because I didn't land a gig at one of like the top tier consulting firms at the MBBs or the Accentures and et cetera of the worlds. But truly, I think it's been an absolute blessing. Through that process, I found smaller companies and I really learned to feel like I was bringing something to the team and got to contribute to teams building things. Um, so yeah, that was kind of my journey debating between development work and product slash consulting and ending up in consulting from there.
Nice. It's very nice to see always, the transition from like multiple industries. And how
Yeah,
you got into the store. A lot of people, when I graduated last year, a lot of people told me that you need to get into like big tech companies because that's
yeah,
how, your career would bloom. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I think you can get more experience whenever it comes to a startup or a smaller companies.
Agreed, agreed. I think there's such major pros to both, but
Mhm.
to your point, I really wish it wasn't such a emphasis and that there wasn't such an emphasis on landing those certain jobs. Because I do know of so many of my peers as well that didn't land those jobs and felt like they failed and completely switched worlds, even though they were so good at what they did and so excited by this world of tech or business or whatever, vertical you're going into. Um, so yeah, completely agree with you there.
Yeah, so you have worked in like various roles, since like consulting to product management, which we spoke about. How did you find those transferable skills, to, show it to your next company that you would be a good fit?
Yeah, 100%. I think I partly got very lucky. So coming out of undergrad, I landed a consulting gig with a small consulting firm in Dallas called Austin CSI. Um, there, they were trying to build a product practice and hoping to get people that were interested in product management, and it was something they didn't have at the time. So I kind of volunteered for that. I had a, loose like graphic design background, so I felt like I understood good design and thought that I could be a good product manager, and I was excited by the field. So I raised my hand and was a part of these conversations. Um, and there I kind of understood the foundation of product management. What is human-centered design? What is design thinking? How are people working to build good products? And there, I really wanted to move to the Northeast. So I knew that I wouldn't be at this company for forever. And so I started applying to consulting firms in the Northeast
Okay.
that I knew centered around product management.
Mhm.
And I think what made me stand out was I think in my cover letter to this consulting firm, Conrad, which is where I started kind of that product career I was telling you about, um, I wrote my cover letter in phases of the design thinking process. So it was like me in my career, I've ideated in these ways, and I'm testing my beliefs in these ways, and I'm iterating in these ways. So just again, like showing that I understood the process and am applying it not just in my career, but beyond that. And I think that that kind of stood out to them. So that's how I transitioned. And then as far as the skills go, I do think consulting and tech
Mhm.
have a lot of overlapping skills. Some of um, the biggest ones I'll start with are probably like simplified communication. I think being able to prioritize and then forecasting and measuring. So if I were to break those down a little bit, I think simplified communication is recognizing when people are doing more than what's necessary. I think it happens a lot in consulting. We love our slide decks, and I think PMs sometimes love overly detailed product roadmaps or PRDs, but knowing what parts of those are necessary to be able to act on and then communicating them, I think is essential to both of those roles. And same thing on the simplified communication piece. I think being able to leverage your conviction and your beliefs in order to either push an idea or to part ways with an existing idea is also, I think, a big part of consulting and product. Um, Secondly, prioritization.
Yeah.
We all have to do it. We have to do it in our lives. So I
Yeah.
think it's a skill that definitely is transferable across consulting and product. But you know, balancing quick wins that kind of move the needle with long-term efforts that may drive bigger impact and making sure everyone around you understands the why behind those is essential in both. Um, and then finally, I said measuring and forecasting. I think both of those roles require you to predict the future in a way with the information that you have today. So with consulting, a lot of times you're handing something over with the predictions that you've made. And in product, you're building your roadmap out with the predictions that you have of how these features might help you. So again, I think with both, you have to forecast really well
Mhm.
and have a good reason to be forecasting those decisions. So yeah, I'd say those three are the bigger transferables that I could think of.
Oh my God, I love these, especially like these points along with the cover letter idea. It's an amazing idea. Never thought about that. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's very,
It's I think it's easy in the job app process, and I've been there as well to kind of repeat the cover letters and use the templates. But when there's something you're really excited about, I think it works out when you like put the extra effort in for sure.
I like that. Um, so in terms of the challenges that you have faced in different communities, I'm sure there would be different challenges at every company. And I would say no book, no course, no video can teach you that it's always on the job. How did you usually face that challenge, or how do you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, that's tough. I guess I'll start by sharing a recent challenge, and then we can talk about like overcoming these things, right? So I think at Invisibly last year, our product was a data for content product. So what that means is, um, or I'll backtrack. We had high intention and belief from our CEO to help the publishing industry. We thought places like the Wall Street Journal, Sports Illustrated, etc., should be thriving businesses, and Invisibly wanted to have a part in helping these places. So we said, okay, what if we have consented data platform, and then the return for the users for sharing that data, for taking surveys on our platform, is actually getting free content back. So we give them subscriptions to the Wall Street Journal, to Sports Illustrated, to Food Network, etc., in return. And like all product managers probably should, we continuously looked at the data, and what we learned was people were really excited by the data transaction. So sharing data, taking surveys was really fun for them. But where we lost the user was the content piece. So yes, they tap into an article one time or two times, but what we saw was really low retention, and that people wouldn't come back to act on this product and come back to search for articles and be excited to read. And that's a whole bunch of things, right? I think there's a whole bunch of context in the world where publishers aren't getting the same traction they used to. And there's a lot of news aggregators already. There's things like Morning Brew and The Skim that do a fantastic job of serving you up business and news in the ways that you want them. So that was the behavior. User behavior just didn't line up. So what we had to do was sunset that whole product. And that was a huge challenge. Like building something now from scratch, getting the team to align on those things, working with our external partners that we had relationships with, all these publishers, and saying, hey, we're not going to be using you in the same way anymore. Um, and I think that's not like a result of, a lot of times I think product managers focus on like, is our sprint velocity good, and
Yeah.
like are we tracking the issues right, and are our metrics set up right? And I don't think it was an issue of any of those things. I think we had high functioning teams. I think it was a matter of picking the wrong problem and
Gotcha.
not being able to like differentiate ourselves quickly enough. And those are, I think, kind of at the core of what PMs and companies are always doing, and why people might miss, as opposed to like like we're not working hard enough. I think it's rarely that. Of course, that does play a role, but I think it's rarely that. So
Mm,
overcoming those challenges, to your point, and to answer your question, I think it was less about the efficiency and the operations, and I think it's more about, are you working towards the right problem? And sometimes it just takes time to figure out or realize that, hey, maybe there's a better and bigger problem to solve here.
yeah, I think at that time, you need to have like a good team to figure out, okay, what's the next step instead of, just thinking about, oh, this happened. So,
Of course.
completely agreed. In terms of, I would say, since you have a lot of experience, you have worked at a large corporation and even a startup as well, what's the big difference that you see?
I think what I've gotten from the smaller teams is definitely more agency.
Okay.
So your decisions, I think, go a longer way. The Invisibly team is, around 20 people.
Okay.
So everyone has a huge role in growth of the organization and the growth of the company. I've really appreciated that in my role. I think that makes work really exciting. And so I think the agency part is the biggest pro for me in a small company. But the biggest pro in a larger company environment might be that you get to learn from incredible product leaders. Like when you don't know how to do product management for the first time, and you get to see someone actually doing it, and you get to understand what makes them so good at what they do,
Mhm.
and how do they communicate with designers, engineers, business teams
Yeah.
to figure out, how to build the best feature and then launch that feature and then iterate on that feature. When you get to see someone do it a few times, I think naturally through osmosis and you being around these people is something you get in the larger organization. So I think navigating the differences is unique to each situation, but I think those are the big differences I've seen is I've been able to hopefully be successful in this smaller company role because I had the chance to learn from other people as well.
Some good points. Because or even like vice versa, like if you're working already for a startup, you're learning way more. You have been like in various roles. I think most of the startups you have to work not only as a product manager but as like different team members as well. Because of
Yeah.
like a smaller team, you are doing multiple roles, and then you can always take that experience towards a larger company.
Yeah, 100%. You're totally right there.
If you have interviewed anyone in the past, for a product manager role, what would you look for in that candidate?
That's a great question. I think what I look for is three big things.
Mhm.
I think it's do they understand or do they are they showing signs of these three things? And I think it's are they willing to understand the users?
Mm.
Are they willing to understand data? And then are they willing to understand the business? So those, if I had to break those down a little bit more, it's with users, you obviously get the understanding of what people are doing through analytics tools. You get to use your mixed panels and your Google Analytics or whatever tool set your company might use to understand what they're actually doing and how they're behaving with the product. And then with the users through qualitative conversations, you get to understand the why behind those decisions. What are they excited by? What are they frustrated by? And why are they acting the way they are? With data, you're able to see changes over time very easily. So are they looking to dive into the data and understand how maybe you build a new feature? How does that impact all the knobs and tools that you use? If you have a new marketing campaign, what is that impacting your users and in what way? And if, are the users benefiting from it or are they not engaging with it as much? And then finally, knowing the industry and the business is super imperative. It comes down to, work means like, let's all make money here. And so are you willing to understand what the equations are? Like, are they figuring out how your product will make money? Are they willing to understand who the competitors are in the market? And are they willing to understand the ecosystem and time it might take to build this thing, ship it, and do a good job with it? So I think what I'm always looking for in a candidate is some tie to understanding the users, understanding the data, and understanding the business.
I like that. Do you see that with like some behavioral questions, or how do you navigate that in terms of the interview?
Yeah, that's a great question. With interviews, it's tough. I hear this often with product leads, and as I've started interviewing more and more, I've truly felt it. You're usually able to tell in the first 10 minutes of a conversation whether you'll be able to work with this person or not. I think usually the barometer, if they check these three boxes of, when I ask them about their experiences, are they telling me about conversations with users? Are they telling me about times they use data to make decisions and how that impacted their business? And if those things are checked off, then what I'm looking for in the conversations are, would I want to travel with this person? Like, can I sit at a gate for 2 hours with this person? And can I have fun with them? And can we talk about things outside of just work? Because I think that's that translates into the work field really well. Um, in terms of real questions and more concrete answers, I think references go a long way, and I'm always asking references. Like, usually people will pick who they think will give a good reference. But what I like to ask the reference is, if in 6 months I'm evaluating this person, can you tell me what I think I would be critiquing them on? What will I be telling them that they can improve on? And usually that can be phrased really positively by the person who is giving that reference as well. They'll be like, candidate A is really incredible at these three things, but if maybe they had to work on something, it would be X, Y, and Z. So usually the interview is more of a gut check because you have a resume, you might have a portfolio, and then you check off those like few things that I talked about. Then references, I think, are a good time to get to know your candidate as well.
Okay, that's interesting. Um,
Yeah.
I'm learning actually a lot of points here whenever I'm going to an interview.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Perfect. In terms of any resources, do you recommend any resources specifically for anyone who wants to get into product management?
Oh yeah. I think the couple that I use the most, I'll share those. I think Lenny's newsletter is a big one. A very popular one in the product community, but I love having just like audio on while I work, and I don't do well with having music on. So I'm listening to Lenny's interviews all the time. I'm a big fan of the newsletter that he sends out. Similarly, Lenny's community has people that have meetups in a whole bunch of cities. So if you're in any of those cities, it's nice to attend those meetups and get to know other PMs and kind of talk about work a little bit in a fun environment. I also really love Product Tea with Leia. Similarly, if you're someone who's focused on product-led growth, Leia does a really good job in talking to people about product-led growth or has newsletters about product-led growth. So I think those are the two that I engage with the most. And then there's the obvious like Reforge and Silicon Valley Product Group, and I think those are fun to check in on every once in a while as well.
Interesting. I have heard about the first one. I have not heard
Yeah.
about the second one, so I will definitely check that out one
Yeah,
out.
yeah, definitely check it out.
Um, so in terms of product management, right now people are going towards AI, ML. Do you think a product manager needs to be technical and needs to know all of those areas as well?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. I think I haven't been a technical product manager. So maybe my answer is a little bit biased. I think everyone has their beliefs here. I think what you as a product manager need to understand is not really being able to code, but it's understanding the technical trade-offs. So it's things like how much technical rigor will feature A take versus feature B? How much time will it take your engineering team to build feature A versus feature B? Does one cost more time, energy, and money? And what's the return on that time, energy, and money? And I think if you know enough to understand those things, then I think you're okay. And again, this is me in a consumer facing, user facing role. I can say this, I'm not in a technical role. So maybe someone in a more technical role building a tool that's way more technical than I've worked on, maybe you do need to be more technical. But I think if you understand those trade-offs and you have an engineering team that can help you understand those trade-offs early on, then I think you're okay.
Okay. I am
Yeah.
not a technical person either. I would say the field that I'm working with in and the company that I'm working with, they don't require me to be technical. Like
Hmm.
just like your point, instead I would just like to know the trade-offs on how if whatever the engineering team is telling me, is that right? Or we can figure out a way around.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, agreed.
So in terms of entry-level product management roles, what are, I would say, the foundation level skills that a product manager requires and how they can learn that with time?
Yeah. Um, so with the caveat that we had the three that we talked about, like users, business, and data. I guess like the other ones I'll add on that I've really valued and that I've cared about is understanding good design, um, dig for decision making with data. So I'll harp on that a little bit more. And then I guess the third is always be a product manager. So I'll dive into those three a little bit. With understanding good design, I think it's again, similar to the technical stuff we talked about, you don't have to be a designer. You don't have to make the best screens in Figma or Sketch or whatever tool you use. But I think you should be able to separate out. And if you see A versus B, you should be able to understand, appreciate, and pick great design from not so good design. And even if you're not comparing to, if you are looking at a feature that you're building, you as the product manager should be able to say, hey, that the placement of that button might be off because I, as the user, will naturally do X, Y, and Z. And if I'm doing X, Y, and Z, I need things to be laid out this way. So again, I don't think design just means visual identity and interface design. It's about like how a user uses the product. And if you can do that, and if you can be good at that, then I think you're set. Um, Secondly, we talked about, again, data. I'll keep harping on this because it served me well, but I think what's allowed me to have confidence in my decision making as I'll still say I'm an early to mid stage PM. I'm 6 or 7 years into work. But it's when I've had data to back up these decisions. It's using those tools that whatever your company has decided to use, diving into the numbers and saying, what are the recurring themes here? Or what are the things that have caused a dip in user performance or has really uptick user performance? Can we now have qualitative conversations with people to talk about that moment and diving into that moment and what changed for them when we launched a feature, took away a feature, whatever change we made. And I think data just will make you more confident and it'll have the team trust you more if you say, it's not just my gut, but it's also the numbers that's telling us to do this. And then the third thing is always be a PM. And this one can be a little bit annoying. And I'm sure you go through this, but as you use the products in your day-to-day life, put your PM hat on. What makes you love those products? What makes you frustrated by those products? And why is it frustrating you? And how can you avoid those things in what you're building? So it could be like an ad and how to get to the skip button, or it could be how Netflix does the next screen in 10 seconds and you don't even have to think about it, which is a pro. So, like all those little things, a PM and a product designer made those decisions. So, thinking about the why behind them, I think helps you get better.
Okay, I can relate to so many things, especially, like whenever I'm looking at my own product, like the company
Yeah.
I'm working for, I am, switching hats and I'm like, okay, I am using this as a user. What would I like to do next?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Exactly.
always so interesting to see like you find more ways to do things if you're looking at from like a consumer or user perspective.
Totally. I totally agree with you.
Just last two questions.
Sure.
If you were to find a product management role as an early graduate, how would you navigate that in terms of this market?
Mm. So, if I were to start looking for a role,
Yeah.
I think, go about the traditional things like go to your LinkedIn's, go to your Indeeds, do the unique cover letters, if you're applying to a really big company, then make sure your resume has all the scannable keywords and do all of those things. I think those are the baseline. Um, and then outside of that, I think it's I think what's worked well for me are more like smaller job boards. So I love the startup world. So one thing that worked for me in getting some interviews was going to each venture capital firm has a job board of the companies that they've invested in. So especially for like designers, PMs, growth marketers, et cetera, things that are common roles at startups. If you go to Sequoia Capital's website, they will have a job board for all the companies that Sequoia has invested in. and all the roles open at those companies. So I think, and I'm sure when they get a candidate in their system, they know that this person applied through the Sequoia website, and there's like intentionality behind that, right? So I know that this person didn't just find the role on LinkedIn, they use this specific place to find me. They know the startup world, they understand ventures, so like let me go there. Similarly, I talked about, Lenny's newsletter and Product Tea with Leia. A lot of these communities have Slack groups. So for me, I'm in Lenny's Slack group, and that's actually how I found my current job at Invisibly. The head of marketing posted in there, and automatically there was a trust established when I applied to the role because she said, oh, this guy obviously cares about product. He understands it. He consumes it. And so I think there's a trust there relative to just like a blank LinkedIn application. So I think those are a couple things that have worked for me. Again, this is beyond doing the basic, like make sure your resume is scannable, get the good cover letter, action, context, and results in the resume. Like all of those things are assumed. And then these are some things that have worked for me.
Yeah, I think right now in this market, everyone is doing all the basics like LinkedIn optimization, resume, and all that stuff.
Exactly.
You need to find something which is different. And I really like your way of how you went into the Slack community and you were looking at roles there. So
Yeah,
it's always a good way to, there's different ways to find roles. I think LinkedIn is like one basic, and there's so many people applying to that roles. So it's always good to see
exactly.
roles.
Yeah, it's so easy. Like you see, and I'm sure you've seen this being active on LinkedIn, but a new role opens up and it's like posted 20 minutes ago, 300 applicants
I
have
know.
applied. And
Yeah.
so on the recruiter too, that's like extremely taxing to be able to look through those applications. So you're right. Everyone's doing the basics. It is a tough market right now. We hear about like all these tech layoffs. So all the empathy to those that have been affected there. But like, yeah, I think there are ways to hunt for more intentional roles that you could be a good fit for.
I agree. Just the last question. I don't want to take much of your time, but
Awesome.
just the last question. What advice, like last advice, do you have for anyone who is new in the career, who wants to get into product management, or who wants to maybe transition into product management from any other field?
Yeah, transitioning to product management and getting into product management. I think this is like this is the thing with most jobs. If I had to simplify like a job
Hmm.
very simply, and I'm repeating words here, but I think it would be understand the goal.
Hmm.
It would be understand your progress towards that goal and see if it can be done either better or more quickly. And I think that is the basis of what product management is. Um, I think great product managers are incredible generalists. So like you understand a little bit of design, you understand the basics of tech, you can dive into marketing and understand what works and what people might gravitate towards. You might be able to write some copy. And again, maybe you're not like the absolute best at any one of those things, but you understand all those things and the why behind those things. Um, so if I had to tell again, we talked about like what makes a good PM, but I think simplifying all of that is can you understand and define your goal? Can you move towards it and understand your progress in achieving that goal? And then if you can see it be done better or faster, can you do that? And can you compel your team and communicate to your team on how to do that? So um, that's the maybe the basis and the simple way of communicating what a PM is. Um, and yeah, I think we touched on some of the application advice and finding the role as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This was very, very helpful, especially for me as well. I learned a lot of things.
Yeah.
But thank you so, so much for your time.
Yeah, no, this was an absolute pleasure. Again, grateful that you're doing all this for the product community, and excited to keep following along the conversations. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you.